Welcome back to the Trinity Channel. It is our blessing and privilege to have you here with us for this 2-week apologetics marathon, the first apologetics marathon of 2016. Today is day 4 of week number 1, and we've already had a number of shows that have taken place already this week. This show that we're doing now has been inputted last minute to inform the world about what is happening in other places. Now, if you live in the area that we're going to be talking about, you see for yourself what is happening. And the title of this show is the Islamization of the United Kingdom. And we are extremely blessed to have our guest on the show today. And if you have not heard of him before, if you've not seen him online, this is going to be an eye-opening experience for you. So our guest is Tommy Robinson. He is the founder and ex-leader of the English Defense League, which also known as the EDL, which was formed in 2009. Since leaving the EDL, he has become an avid speaker on the problems in the Western world with the rise of extremism, Islam, ISIS, hate speakers, and Sharia. And I'm going to be holding up his book a number of times throughout this show. And these hard copies of it are actually, let me pull it up here so you can see. The hard copy is actually a little bit harder to get. You have to go onto his website, which I'm going to give you as well, tommyrobinson.co.uk. This is the hard copy version. It's going to be over 300 pages of Tommy's story. And if you go to Amazon, you should be able to find the Kindle version for just $9.99. But we want to encourage you to pick up Tommy's book. And again, this is going to be an hour-and-a-half show with Tommy talking about what he has seen in the United Kingdom. We're going to have a few different segments of this show. The first segment, we're going to talk about what Tommy has seen, because he grew up in the United Kingdom. He's going to explain what he's seen from when he was a young boy up till now. So Tommy's going to give us a ton of information talking about this topic. The second segment of the show, we're going to have a friend on who has lived under Sharia, which is Islamic law. And then the third segment of the show, we're going to have Tommy give more details about his personal story of what has happened to him personally as he became the founder and leader of the EDL. And he's going to have some jaw-dropping information to give you. Tommy, with that introduction, it is our privilege and our blessing and a blessing to the world to have you on the show here with us.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to come on. Thank you.
So Tommy, this is basically a show pretty much created for you and around you. So this is your opportunity to tell the world about the UK, what we're going to, again, be doing here in the first segment. So why don't we go back in history to when you were younger and give our audience a chronological timeline of what you have seen, experienced, heard back then up until now.
Okay, so I was born in 1982. When I was born in my hometown of Luton, Luton is 30 miles north of London. When I was born, there was one mosque. Now, today, there's over 30 mosques. So we've seen the growth of Islam. In my hometown, white English people are a minority, and we have 30% of the town is Muslim. Along with that, and the growth of that, I've seen the decay and the decay and the Islamization of the town. With Luton, which is my hometown, was the launch pad for the 7/7 bombings. The fertilizer bomb plot, they were from Luton. The Stockholm bomber, if you remember the Stockholm suicide bomber, he was radicalised in Luton. We've had multiple, time after time, Abu Hamza, Omar Bakri, all these people, their organisation, which was called Al Mujahideen, their head office was in my hometown. They were recruiting and radicalising when none of us knew what Islam was. So we were behind the game. Now, I watched, and as I was growing up as a young boy, I don't know if many people watching this, if you've heard of the grooming process in the UK, they call it grooming, but it's rape jihad. It's rape jihad where young English girls are targeted and large groups of Muslim men. To many people this may sound unbelievable, but if you start reading into it, many large groups of Muslim men were passing these girls around and taking them as sexual slaves from the age of 10, 11, 12 years old. They were used as sexual slaves and kept. And this was done with knowledge of the Islamic leaders, the political leaders, and the police leaders. There was a conspiracy of silence between all of these groups to facilitate and allow this to happen due to the fear of those people stopping it, the fear of being called racist, That's how powerful political correctness has become. The fear of being called racist, and also the fear of the reaction from the Muslim community, because everyone's constantly worried of what followers of the religion of peace are going to do. Now, this grooming, my cousin was raped by a large gang of Muslim men when I was aged probably 12 years old, and so was she. And I can remember hearing the family stories, and I can remember hearing the family would go to the police, and back then the police would do nothing. They were not prosecuting these men for raping young English girls. So obviously a lot of the things that have happened to me in my upbringing shape my belief. They're experiences that have made me the person I am. I had a friend who again was my age, and his father was driving to get a takeaway with him, and he had a bit of a road incident with some young Muslim men. Those young Muslim men rang for friends. Anyone can Google this online. The lad's name who was murdered was named Mark Sharp. They beat him in front of his son. They beat him and they beat him and they beat him with sticks, with bats, with poles. And finally they snapped a knife off in his head. There was an explosion of violence in our town, orchestrated by members of the Muslim community targeting the non-Muslims. And this went on for years. And the final straw for me, I've watched it all change. The schools that I went to, the school I went to, you had the Muslim playground and you had the non-Muslim playground. The divide and the segregation, and bearing in mind the town I'm from is one of the most multicultural and diverse towns in Europe. Yeah? Now, every other culture, the makeup and the groups of my friends are St. Lucian, they're Jamaican, they're Bulgarian, they're Italian. My mother's Irish. Yeah? All of us are sons of immigrants. We've all adapted, assimilated and integrated into British culture and the way of life. All of my friends have. So there's no divide. There's no racial divide. There's a religious divide in the town. There's only ever been a religious divide. And that's not a divide that we've orchestrated or we've wanted. It's a divide that's been put upon us by the Muslim community, who have completely failed to integrate or assimilate in any way. There's been a recent scandal called the Rotherham scandal. I don't know if you've heard about this. In one town in the UK called Rotherham, there was an investigation done, and they found out that 1,400 young English girls had been passed around, raped continuously for 30 years. For the last 30 years this has been going on. Now, what they found out was that the police were fully aware of it. In fact, if I tell you a couple of stories from this government investigation found that in one of the instances, these Muslim men who are aged 30 years old and 40 years old, they had a 12 and 13-year-old girl in a house that they were all raping. The girls' fathers went to the house to get their daughters back. The police turned up and arrested the fathers. Now these things, I know, and I'll tell you another story. The police turned up, there was a derelict house where 5 Muslim men had an 11-year-old English girl, and they were raping her in this house. The police turned up. The police arrested the girl for being drunk and disorderly. Now, your people really need to look into this, because it will sound so far-fetched, it won't sound real. These horror stories, I was talking about 7 years ago, 10 years ago, and people didn't believe us. People called us bigots. People called us extremists for talking about them. 2 years ago, we had the Rotherham expose, which hit this whole country. It was front page of all the national newspapers, where it basically come out and it admitted all of this is going on. Muslim men, this street level grooming gangs where the Muslim men would be picking up the schoolgirls and doing this. 90% of the convictions are Muslim men, out of a population in the UK of 4%. 90%. That is such an overrepresentation. And the stories of what these men were doing, and that they were allowed to do it, once people then saw, and now we're seeing court case after court case after court case every month, huge court cases where large groups of sometimes 30 Muslim men, and these are men that are these are not like usual case paedophile rings. These are brothers, cousins, work colleagues, taxi drivers, who are all taking part in sharing and raping these young English girls. And that's been going on across the UK. And the police, and it's come out now quite clearly, and the police are holding their hands up and apologising to say that, and the reason they didn't do anything was because they didn't want to be called racist. And actually, some of the people in those councils who tried to highlight what was happening, they tried to talk about what was happening, they were sent on diversity courses. The council sent them on diversity courses for cultural sensitivity. So there's been some of what's happening in the UK is horror stories, and it's been allowed to happen with full knowledge of the police.
Okay, and how is this even possible there? I mean, is this happening everywhere, or is it just in these no-go zones, quote unquote, or Sharia-controlled zones? Is this happening just, are you talking there or outside, all over the place? I mean,
this is happening in every town and city that has a Muslim community. Every town and city across the UK. And what they actually do is, if a girl's family were kicking up a fuss, they move the girl that they're raping. They take her from one Muslim community in one city and they take her to the other city. They move the girls around. This has been going on across the UK. And towns and cities now, we have entire areas that have become no-go zones for non-Muslims. Some of these areas, in my hometown, it's called Berry Park. It's a no-go zone where you don't see English people. English people don't go. If they go, they're accosted. Our women are accosted. Our women are insulted. Our women are attacked, harassed. The police don't go. It's completely different, and most of these areas have their own Sharia tribunals, which are Sharia courts. We have 85 Sharia courts operating in the UK now. We've seen a complete growth of a parallel legal system, cultural system, a nation being built within a nation. That's what we're witnessing. And the England and the UK that you think you know, that you imagine of what it was like, that's changed and that's going. And that's where we're at now. I think currently we're in some of the most pivotal years in this country's Christian history because it's under attack. And it's under attack with the full support of our liberal elite. Our liberal and apologist elite are facilitating it. We have huge influence of Saudi money in the UK, Saudi and Qatari money, Islamic blood money I'd call it, but we have huge influence from owning football stadiums to owning shopping centres to owning parts of our stock market to owning major banks to owning the major supermarkets to owning every single port in the UK is owned by Saudi Islamic money. So we have huge problems and we're in a very bad situation here.
It definitely sounds like it. I think this is overwhelming probably for a lot of people too. Like you said, it sounds far-fetched. We're in America. It seems like even though America was founded on Christian principles, we look to the UK and we see what is happening there and how it's become Islamized. And there's a book that I picked up. It's called The Death of Christian Britain, Understanding Secularization from the 1800s to 2000. But the author of that focuses mainly on the last 50 years and how it has moved away from Christianity and has become, like you said, multicultural, secularized, and that creates a vacuum for whichever people group is the strongest or wants to come in and kind of take over next. Now, fortunately, here in America, we still have many Christians. We have a big Christian influence. We have many conservative areas of the United States. I mean, is this just pretty much completely gone from the UK? And has there been a vacuum there? And have Muslims kind of taken advantage of that? Does that explain what has happened there since you grew up?
The belief system, there is no belief in the UK. The Christian belief system is finished in the UK. The church for years have been very weak, the church leadership. And when you talk about filling that void, there's been a systematic and an organised attack on Christianity and on Englishness, on being proud of being English. There's been an attack on our culture, our history, in a way that through from the schools all the way down to make us feel, to make us not feel proud, to make us feel ashamed of our history, ashamed of our past. And through that, what they create is a defeated youth who don't know who they are. They don't know who they are, they don't know where they come from, they don't know what they're about. And they are then easily swayed, which is why we have so many young English men are converting to Islam. Because Islam is a powerful reaction to it that gives them that sense of identity, that gives them that community. Because our communities have been destroyed. They've been destroyed with the influx of people who have come in from an alien ideology, who have came in to take over our communities, and the slow breakdown of our communities. And yeah, it would be safe to say that there are still many practicing Christians in the UK. but many of our leading church leaders side with Islam.
Okay.
They side with Sharia. We've seen that. They've come out publicly and said it. We've seen the Archbishop of Canterbury saying that we need more Sharia in the UK.
Wow.
That Islam is a religion of peace. So yeah, there's huge problems in the UK. Huge.
Okay. And Christians in America, and just even non-Christians, we see how America has declined, and it seems to be moving more towards a secularization, all talking about tolerance and multiculturalism. What's true for you is all that matters. What's true for me, what's true for you, that makes it true. That there's not objective truth that exists outside of our minds. Basically, when we look to the UK, I mean, Americans can look to what you're talking about. And here's the thing that I want to get your feedback on. Is like, okay, well, we can look to see what the UK has done, the problems that they have made for themselves, the mistakes that they've made, and then now basically reaping what they have sown. You know, I think about America, and I think about my children and grandchildren and so on. And I think there's only two options here. It's either to look to the UK and learn from their mistakes or follow in their footsteps. What would you say to that?
You have to. You have to wake up. You have to. I came to America in 2010. I received 10 months in prison for illegally entering America. I came because I knew the message I had was so important to tell. Because I am a living product. I've grown up in a town that has been taken over. That's slowly being taken over. And I can talk of the effects it has on the country, on your people, on your future, on my children's future. I look at my children and I know that as an Englishman, we have to protect our country and our values and our history from where we come from, and it is under attack. And every American, every single one of you should be looking to the UK, because you're, I'd say, 10 years behind us. Yeah, so you've got an opportunity there to try and prevent the problems we have now. We have a complete parallel system, complete divide in the UK, and it's not getting any better. It's not going to get any better. We have the Muslim community and the rate at which their demographic is growing. 5.6 children on average, we have 1.3. That cannot be sustained. The birth rate and the figures, the demographic figures of the growth of Islam in the UK, it's unstoppable. And that's where we see, and it's unstoppable because our benefit system is paying for it. Muslims are having free wives. Like my local imam has 3 wives and 14 children that we probably pay for. Now, how do you keep up with that growth? It's impossible.
Yeah, well, our audience, Tommy, I'm not sure if you're aware, this is an apologetics marathon. Apologetics being the defense of the Christian faith. We have many Christians who watch this show. They know what apologetics is. We have many Muslims throughout the world who watch this show. This show is broadcast to countries where it's illegal to own a Bible, and that would be for people who are living under Sharia. So this is probably eye-opening for people, because even people who are under Sharia, who've never left the country, you know, they don't know what happens in the UK. This is probably a lot of news to them. This is especially a lot of news to Americans throughout the United States of look to the UK, look at what they have done, look at what has happened because of that. And another thing I think about too is, okay, if a country moves away from its Christian foundation and so on, and it becomes more secularized, and again, we're seeing the effects of that in the UK, but look to America. We move away from where we are right now. What are the chances of happening next? America becoming re-Christianized, or going down this slippery slope of secularization, multiculturalism, relativism, redefining the definition of tolerance, not being you believe what you believe, I believe what I believe, and we'll still put up with each other. Well, no, now it's like if you have an opinion outside of the norm, you're intolerant. You say this isn't true, you're intolerant. No. Well, we need to go to not only what the Founding Fathers meant by the Constitution and Bill of Rights, but also we need to get back to tolerance. And hey, my heart is for Muslims throughout the world to repent and put their trust in Christ. And in America, you have freedom of religion. Go to the mosque, do the 5 pillars, but the freedom of religion in America is following your religion as much as you can, as much as you would like, without infringing upon the rights of others, without infringing upon the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. What does the UK not have, I guess, that has allowed all this to happen, and this Islamization, other than multiculturalism? I mean, what law is in Europe that would allow this to come in and to take over so much? I mean, what has happened there? But
even, you talk about freedom of religion. Well, Muslims don't believe in freedom of religion at all. We know that by the punishment that apostates face. And even in the UK, we have apostates living in fear. We have an apostate just recently violently attacked with pickaxe handles and hammers. Violently attacked simply for leaving Islam. He converted to Christianity. He converted to Christianity and he nearly got killed. He nearly got killed and he lived in fear. And the police again do not act in a way that should protect him. So in the whole of Europe is seeing an influx and an invasion, a current invasion, and the Islamization where Muslims and Islam are favoured in comparison to all other faiths. When we talk about multiculturalism, I speak about multiculturalism in a different way to most, because I don't believe multiculturalism I don't believe it's multiculturalism that's the problem. I don't believe it's multiculturalism that's failed, because the Sikhs, the Hindus, the Jews, they're fine. Yeah? What's failed is Islam. One religion, one ideology. That's it. Yeah. The rest of them are all working fine in the UK. It's just this one, which is not here to assimilate or integrate. It's here to dominate. And I don't know if in the UK last night we had a programme by Trevor Phillips, who was the head of race and equalities in the UK, a black man. And for the last 20 years, he's been screaming Islamophobia and on the side of the Muslims. And now he's just had his moment after seeing a poll from the UK, a poll on it was called What British Muslims Really Think. And what it found was that 2/3 of British Muslims, which is 2 million Muslims in the UK, would not report on a fellow Muslim terrorist. They would not report. We found that 20%, 700,000 Muslims in the UK, believe that violence to enforce against free speech, anyone criticising Mohammed, that violence is justified. Violence is justified. We found that 4%, which is 100,000 Muslims in the UK, are supportive of suicide bombings. Now, these are the exact same reasons that Donald Trump would have given for wanting to stop Muslim immigration. This poll that went out in the UK yesterday, I know people on the street who live in these towns and cities, we know what Muslims think. We know how they act. We know the hostility we've faced all of our life just for being non-Muslim. But to many of our liberal elite, these figures and these statistics have shocked them. And that's why it's been all over our news all week about what British Muslims really think. And the alarmist idea that all of a sudden the country are waking up and realising, or the political elite are waking up and realising, that this isn't going to work. Okay. It's not going to work. What do we do about it? We have millions now, millions and millions of Muslims here who are not going to integrate or assimilate. They don't want to adapt to the British way of life. They want us to adapt to the Islamic way of life.
And something, Tommy, I'm sure you are aware of this, but some of our audience may not be. Islam is completely different than any other man-made religion in the world, because Islam is a religio-political system. That means it's a religion and a political ideology combined. When we look to what we now know as Sharia, Islamic law, that is derived from the Quran and the Sunnah, the example of Muhammad. So we take basically the Quran, we take the Hadith, you take those together, that is how Sharia is derived. There's 4 major schools of Islamic jurisprudence: the Hanbali school, Hanafi school, Maliki school, Shafi'i school. Again, different countries are under different amounts of Sharia. But here in America, we look to the UK, we see what's happening there, and there are many Christians around the United States who say, hey, I have a Muslim neighbor, co-worker, and they don't act this way, they don't talk this way, they are peaceful and so on. And those are the Muslims who I love, the moderates, nominal Muslims. And our heart is for them to repent and put their trust in Jesus Christ, and of course for Muslims throughout the world. But what you're describing, this isn't exactly what ISIS is doing or what Muhammad was doing, but it does seem closer to that than many Muslims here in the United States, who we could fall under this, again, a nominal, liberal, cultural maybe Muslim who...
Not devout Muslim.
Excuse me?
Non-devout Muslim.
Non-devout, non-fundamentalist. I would, from what you're saying, I mean, this sounds like fundamentalist or political Islamists, I mean, making their way. I have 2 questions I want to ask of you to answer, and then we want to get into these no-go zones, Sharia-controlled zones, that we have some pictures to show our audience. But before we get to the more into the Sharia and the Sharia-controlled zones, 2 questions. The first question is, these are going to kind of be recommendations from you for the world, where you are and where we are. But the first question is, what is your recommendation for the rest of Europe? I mean, is there any part of Europe that is not like this right now?
No. Every country in Europe, which is, and some countries worse than others. Some countries, for example, if you look at France, the Muslim population of France is approximately 7%. In prison, 70%, 70%. Okay. In Belgium, 60% of the prisons are Muslim. Wow. What we've seen, which we see continuously across Europe, is riots by members of the Muslim community, attacks, the rape epidemic, the figures of rape against our women is when you actually look into it, when you divulge into it. If you look at Sweden, the city of Malmo now has the highest rate per capita in the world. Malmo in Europe. Wow. Malmo in Europe. So these figures, and when you look across Europe at what's happening, there is a lot we can do, but we're doing nothing. Yeah. For example, in the UK and across Europe, we've seen schools that have been taken over. We've seen, I think 60% of ISIS supporters in Germany are ex-university students. We've seen Jihadi John was an ex-Westminster University student. Many of the people who have gone to fight for ISIS have been university graduates. That's because for years we've allowed Hizb ut-Tahrir, who are a caliphate extremist organisation, are operating in the majority of UK universities under Islamic societies. So this is all orchestrated and organised. The prison system in the UK, I've spent time in the prison system. We'll talk about that later. Yeah. But our prison system, some of them are like ISIS training camps. That every single institution in the UK has been infiltrated and affected by the spread of Islamist ideology. Every single institution. And nothing, due to the colour of it being a religion, due to political correctness and due to fear, because fear is paralysing, and our leaders, from top to bottom, are scared and intimidated by the influence Islam has. So because of that, we've allowed all of this to happen. We should be stopping all Saudi money coming into this country. The spread of any Wahhabi, Salafist, Deobandi, all the extremist and fundamentalist sects of Islam, the madrasas, which are popping up left, right and centre, which we've seen, again, your viewers will not know of this, but we've had schools in the UK where we've seen undercover footage where they were teaching the children in the Muslim assemblies, teaching the children not to walk on the same side of the road as the British man. British white women are prostitutes and slags. This is being taught to school children. Okay. We had on this documentary last night, a 9-year-old Muslim pupil said to his school teacher, "Why have you not covered your hair? Slags don't cover their hair." This is what's being bred into young children. And that's why, to stop it, we have to tackle the teachings of it, which is being propagated and spread by Saudi Arabia in madrasas across the UK. We have over 100,000 young Muslim children right now in madrasas in the UK being indoctrinated in a book of hate. Okay. That is going to cause us huge problems. Okay.
We are going to have to take a break here in just a few minutes. And this show could go on for 3 or 4 hours, Tommy, just all the information that you have. I do appreciate you using the term Salafism, because here in America, we're hearing the term Wahhabism a little bit more on the news. But as I said in a show earlier today, when we say Wahhabism or, ISIS, they're just Wahhabis. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab wasn't even born until the 1700s. So how are you going to blame every jihadist, militant, extremist act from the time of Muhammad up to the 1600s on a man who wasn't even born to the 1700s? So I appreciate using the term Salafist or Salafis, because Salafism is the idea, is not based on a particular individual other than Muhammad himself. Because a Salafi view, Salafis can live today, Salafis could have lived in the 1100s. The Salafism is the view that Muhammad and the first 3 generations of Muslims were the ideal Muslim. So every Wahhabist is a Salafist, but not every Salafist is a Wahhabist, if that makes sense. And we even hear here on the news too, ISIS, people who are joining them, it's just like people who join gangs. They want to be part of something and that kind of thing. It brings it down to like a sociological issue. But as you have said, people who have doctorates have joined this jihad, this violent jihad in your area and throughout the world. So it's not a young, immature, I'm trying to just fit in somewhere kind of attitude. It's bringing it completely away from the religion itself. We would encourage our audience to not just ask your Muslim neighbor, friend, what Islam teaches. Look to the primary sources. Look to the Quran. Look to the Hadith, the things that Muhammad said, did, and approved of. Look to the Sirah literature, the Sirat Rasulullah by Ibn Ishaq, the earliest biography of Muhammad. Look to Al-Waqidi's biography. Look to primary sources. Now, Tommy, in just a few minutes, we need to take a break, and we want to bring on our other guest with you, and we can get into the Sharia-controlled zones in the second segment. But the last question I have before the commercial break is, what recommendations do you have for the USA, for the United States of America, to not end up where you are right now, surrounded by what you're surrounded by?
Stop Islam. That's it. Stop the spread, stop the domination, stop the telling everyone that every culture is equal and every ideology is equal, because it's not. Our culture and our way of life and the Christian way of life is superior. It is better. It is better. So we shouldn't be allowing this to be propagated and spread it's national curriculum in the UK. National curriculum. Part of our education is for all of our children now have to visit the mosque. We're lied to. That our children are told that jihad means holy inner struggle. My daughter, who is 7 years old, this is what you have to stop, the indoctrination. The indoctrination supported by the government many times. My daughter was 7 years old, and I had the biography of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq because I was preparing for a debate. And on the book, obviously, it says Muhammad. And my daughter looked at it, and she said, "Muhammad, peace be upon him." And I've never mentioned Islam to my child. And I said, "What did you just say?" And she said, "You have to say peace be upon him when you say when you see Muhammad." I said, "Who told you that?" School. Wow. School. Yeah. So this is what is happening. This is what's happening in the UK, and that has to be stopped. Yeah. We have to, and that's slowly, and that's across the UK. It's cool to be a Muslim. It's favourable to be a Muslim. It's looked down and frowned upon for Christianity. Anyone else is laughed at through their religion. Apart from we don't offer the same humour or the same criticism of any other religion. We're not allowed to. You're not allowed to criticise or mock or joke about Islam or Muhammad in the way you are about Jesus and Christianity. All of these things, what America has to do, stand up for who you are, stand up for where you've come from, and stand up for your own identity, and stop it. Because if you have a love for your country and a love for your people, you have to stop it. That's what we know. I know that. That's why I've dedicated my life to stopping it. I know what the future holds in the UK with Islam. I know where we're heading, and I look at my 3 children, and I know that we have to try and do something to stop this.
Yeah. Well, Tommy, we thank God for you and for all of the time that you are giving us on this show, and we've only had about a third of the show go by so far. Our viewing audience around the world, I am asking you to get the link, the URL to this specific show, share it on YouTube, you can share it on YouTube, but share it on Facebook, on Twitter, all the social media outlets, and let people know. Let people make informed decisions when they go to vote, informed decisions about different policies that are being implemented. Here in the United States, as many of you know, Islam is being talked about more and more in school curriculums. It seems almost unbalanced that a lot of time and pages are being given to Islam specifically. People know here in America, this tolerance thing, many Muslims cry intolerance, they cry this, they cry that, but we need to be honest at the same time, intellectually honest with what the future could hold depending on the decisions that we make today. So we have to take just a couple-minute break. Thank you so much for being with us. Again, our guest here is Tommy Robinson, author of Enemy of the State. Go to Amazon, go to your bookstore, get the Kindle version for $9.99 or buy the book from Tommy's website to support him and his work and his family, because he's doing this full time to inform the world. So please come back or stay where you're seated, because we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes to continue this informative, vital show.
Did you know
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Trinity Channel on ABN. This very important show was inserted at the last minute. This was not part of the original plan, but as you know, or you may know, you may not know, so if not, it's a good thing you're watching the show. This is a vital topic today, and we're extremely blessed to have a very informative guest here on the show. The Islamization of the United Kingdom. Tony, what's Islamization? It's the process of a society shift towards Islam. And we've seen this Islamization take place in the United Kingdom more so than in other countries. You living in America might say, hey, I've seen this kind of happen in America. More talk about Islam in the school books and more of a talk of tolerance to Muslims in particular, even more so than other people. I, as a Christian, see all people made in the image of God. We need to share the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ with all people. Muslims, I mean, if all Muslims throughout the world, ISIS, militants, extremists, all became nominal, liberal. I don't have anything against the Constitution. I don't have anything against anyone who practices any religion. That would be great, but what are the chances of 1.6 billion people becoming reformed in that way? But also, as far as eternity, if every Muslim in the world became nominal, then all we would be doing is making this world a better place to go to hell from. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to die, we're all going to stand before God, and we're going to be judged for our lives. We've all sinned against God. We're guilty. We've broken the 10 Commandments. Look to Exodus chapter 20, Deuteronomy chapter 5. We are in need of a Savior. Jesus Christ is that Savior, and He is found in the New Testament of the Bible, not the Isa of the Quran. Your Muslim friends might say, hey, I believe in Jesus. They believe in a completely different Jesus, not the Jesus of the New Testament. His name is Isa. He's found in the Quran, completely different understanding. So it's not the same. Just like when you talk to Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, it's a completely different Jesus. But we want to get back to our friend, Tommy Robinson. He is the author of Enemy of the State. You can find this book on Amazon. You can find it on his website. He is the founder and ex-leader of the English Defense League, the EDL. At this time, we want to bring on our second Skype guest as well. And not only would I recommend that you pick up Tommy's book, either in Kindle form or through his website to support him and his work, but our next guest is Nonie Darwish. She is a best-selling author. She's written 3 books so far. You can find them on Amazon. Pick up her book when you pick up Tommy's book. She has a book called Now They Call Me Infidel. She has a book called Cruel and Usual Punishment, the terrifying global implications of Islamic law. She has another book as well. So please pick up all of her books in addition to Tommy's. But we have her here on the show because that specific title I just named, Cruel and Usual Punishment, she talks about the global implications of Islamic law. And in the second segment, not only do we want to have Nonie on to tell us what she has experienced living under Sharia and being very familiar with it, to where she's written this multi-100-page book on the topic, but also we want to have Tommy continue. We want to give Nonie some time as well. But Tommy has some pictures that he wants to share with us about Sharia-controlled zones in the UK. No, the whole UK is not under Sharia like other countries are, but there are neighborhoods. I mean, you might hear there's no-go zones. Tommy's going to explain those to us, and Nonie can come in at any time to add to what he wants to say or to verify if this actually is Sharia or not. So first, Nonie, welcome to the show.
My pleasure, Tony. And hello, Tommy. Nice to meet you finally.
It's great to have you both on the show together. So, Nonie, if you would like to just take a couple minutes and just share with our audience a little bit maybe about yourself, about the research that you've done, either that being life experience or whatever else, to write this book that we encourage our listeners to pick up. And then we'll give it back to Tommy. You guys go back and forth as Tommy talks about the Sharia control zones and all that. But I want to give you a couple minutes, Nonie.
Most Muslims, like myself, when I was a Muslim, I never knew what Sharia is. We were never educated in it. Education about Islam was limited to the sheikhs, and the sheikhs acted like gods, and we were just obedient servants, and that's how Islam wants Muslims to be. They don't want them to be knowledgeable, but they act like they are these big thinkers about Sharia, when Sharia really is no big deal. I mean, anybody can open a book and read that it's an obligation to lie. It's slander is allowed. Exaggeration and slander are allowed. Killing of apostates is allowed not just by the government, but any Muslim who kills an apostate will not be prosecuted. There are laws that tell Muslims if you kill another Muslim, you will be killed. But if you kill a non-Muslim, you will not get the death penalty. So there are clear laws that are totally against human rights, totally against freedoms. And Winston Churchill has warned us about Islam many years ago. God bless him. He never, if he had known that Europe was going to surrender to Islam, I doubt if he was going to even fight Hitler, because Europe finally surrendered to Hitler through Islam. So Sharia is the most cruel and enslaving law ever created on earth. And this is what the West is tired of being free. That's how I look at it. I don't find the Western democracy proud anymore in itself. The West is not eager to preserve its freedoms, and that's why Islam is powerful. It's not powerful because Islam has an intrinsic power in it. Islam really is not that much of a weak, a strong religion, because it relies on fear and killing and the threat of execution to keep people inside Islam. I was born and raised a Muslim in Cairo, Egypt, and the only reason many Muslims are inside Islam is because of the death penalty for apostasy. And so this is a weak religion because it doesn't rely on the religion itself to attract people. It relies on fear. And Europe bought the fear. The problem is the West bought the fear. And then we have created a whole new generation in Western Europe and America of young people who are really they have no religion. They have been crushed by the secular movement. They have been crushed by the feminist movement. And suddenly they can only feel they are men under Islam. So they're converting. Why? Because we abandoned our Bible. So we're no longer proud of the Bible. And because of that, I can only blame the bad situation that made the West so unproud of itself. And we have to go back to our Bible to get back the strength and revive our Western culture. Otherwise, Islam will win again. Yeah. It keeps winning, not by its own power. It keeps winning because of the weakness of humanity.
Okay. Nonie, thank you for that information. And I would re-recommend your book to our audience, Cruel and Usual Punishment, The Global Implications of Islamic Law. And you wrote in this book, and it's actually not even in the main part of the book itself, but in the intro, you wrote, Islam has annihilated every culture it has invaded or immigrated into. So Tommy, going to you, and seeing this immigration into the UK and this Islamization of the UK, please continue on with what you have seen there. When you walk down the streets, when you think, okay, well, this neighborhood I shouldn't go down, why? Can you start getting into that, please?
Yeah, and you're very right. In what we've bred now is a generation of cowards. That's what we've created, a generation of cowards. We've created them in the UK and in Europe. That's what we now see, a generation of cowards who are afraid. What people have to understand, what I realise is we have an estate in Luton called Farley Hill. Farley Hill was a predominantly white working class estate. Now, it goes like that. Yeah? That's how quickly it can come. And I remember I'd be on that estate and look around and think, Jesus, what's happened here? The spread is overnight. It's just all of a sudden, bam, burqas everywhere, Salafists everywhere, illegal mosques being practiced. And straight away, the natural aggression and hostility. There's something very different, which I always understood growing up, because I've got every culture and every religion, every different faith. But there was always something different that I put down to Pakistanis, because it was all Pakistanis. I thought that they've got a real problem. But it's only when I grew up and understood more about Islam that it was a hostility towards non-Muslims and an aggression that when I was young, and this is the same for most young white English kids in my town, I was told by my parents, don't have eye contact with the Muslims. Don't look at the Muslims. So what you have is people walking around with their head down. Now, I can't walk around down with my head down. I would never would be brought to that place. But many English kids now, they're walking around defeated with their heads down. And the slow, when you talk about Sharia zones, the pictures that you had would show, basically we had this big uproar in the UK where this group, there's a ginger Muslim convert, this group went around their Islamic community and they posted these pictures everywhere that said Sharia zone.
Yeah. And Tommy, just to stop you for 1 second, I want to let our studio know, whenever we can, let's show those pictures that Tommy has for us. And Tommy, go ahead and keep talking and explaining those.
So these pictures were put up, and they're basically Muslims declaring their Sharia zone, no alcohol, no short skirts, no holding, basically all the laws of Sharia in this zone. Now, everyone was, well, not everyone, but the liberal elite in the UK was shocked by these posters that were put up in the Muslim community. Now, I wasn't shocked, because in Luton, we know full well, for years, every month you'll read a story in the newspaper where a non-Muslim has been savagely beaten. They haven't been robbed or mugged, they've just been beaten walking home. Now that's because they're walking home intoxicated with alcohol in a Muslim area, and that's not allowed. So we've seen the slow, and in fact, if your viewers go on and put in Sharia gangs London, you'll see gangs of these young Muslim men who would come out at night. They'd stop non-Muslim women. They'll tell them they're not allowed to dress like this in the Sharia zone. They'd chase homosexuals violently. They'd violently attack people to enforce Sharia in these Sharia zones. Now, what these leaflets did was they allowed everyone, they put it on the map for everybody. But anyone who's been living near these areas, we fully understand them anyway. We fully understand the beatings. We understand what it's about. It's the slow enforcement of Sharia. We've also seen advertisement boards and placards in my town. So every time there's a billboard, like an advertisement board, every time there's an advertisement board that shows a woman's skin, we have the Sharia police that would come out. And these can be, one of them, coincidentally, was right next to our police station. And it was probably 15 foot, 20 foot high in the air. They still came down. They put ladders up and they painted over all of the skin. So all you see left is the eyes. Now, this is, they may seem like small things, but that's the chipping away. Because what you then get is those same companies who would be advertising swimwear or women in bikinis, they'll stop advertising in those areas because they know that their billboards are going to get attacked. So slowly, you have the enforcement of Sharia, where everything becomes Sharia compliant. All the restaurants, the pubs close, the restaurants will become halal only. The billboards stop showing skin, and that's what we see. I've seen that my whole life. You start seeing people stop going into these areas. People are scared, and that's it. We create an Islamic ghetto. That's what we have, an Islamic ghetto. If any of you have the time, if you go on YouTube and put in Tommy Robinson, Oxford University, you'll see I give a speech at Oxford University where, because I had time, I show video after video after video to show complete evidence of my upbringing in my hometown of Luton, to show people this is what it's like where I live. Yeah? This is not a story. I'm not talking about something I'm reading in a book. Yeah? This is my life, and this is where I live, and this is where I come from, and this is why I'm doing what I do. And for the first time after doing that, for the first time people sit and understand who I am, because so many of these people, they don't live where we live. They don't live near Islamic ghettos. So I was trying to take them out of their life, which if you watch this video, trying to take them out of their life and say, look at where I live. Yeah? And I kept asking in this video, what would you do if this was where you live? Because so many of these people would be shouting at us saying, oh, everyone's equal. And as you said earlier, but my Muslim taxi driver's a lovely bloke. The Muslim who works in my shop is a lovely bloke. Yeah, he probably is. Majority of them are. What I've also found is that, you spoke earlier about the biography of Ibn Ishaq. I found that the majority of Muslims I talk to, as your other guest has just said, they know nothing. They know very little of Islam. When I talk to Muslims, every Muslim I've debated or talked to them, and I talk about things that Muhammad did, whether it be torturing Kanana for his gold or slaughtering a Jewish tribe after they surrendered, all these different things, they're shocked. They have no knowledge of it. No knowledge at all. And many of them I speak to may be sitting there fully in their hijab, a lady, she doesn't know anything that's in the Quran. anything. But they still argue blindly, Islam is peace. I said, you don't know that because you haven't even picked up the Quran. You're just born into something, and again, your other guest has gone down to the reasons why. Due to the apostasy rules and the fact that there'll be, as I'm sure your guest has experienced, the fact that they'll be ostracised from their entire community. The mere fact of even questioning Islam, it's not allowed.
Okay. Let me go to you, Nonie. Based on everything that Tommy had just said, and for our audience, please inform them. Does Islam mean peace? If not, then what does it mean? But also, what Tommy is experiencing in the UK, all that he is describing and what's happening there, is this just a bunch of radical, quote-unquote, Muslims who have hijacked a peaceful religion? Or is it something else?
No, actually, the Arab Spring is spreading to Europe now. So we had an Arab Spring in the Middle East. They brought down all the leaderships in all moderate countries. So there are no moderate countries anymore in the Middle East. And now they need more oxygen. By oxygen, I mean they need more outlets to go and spread Islam, because Islam is like a fire in a room. If you don't have oxygen in it, Islam dies. It's a very weak religion, and in fact, it can only survive by moving to new lands and subjugating new people. So I see that the United Kingdom now is the new ground that's giving oxygen to the fire of Islam, and it's the Arab Spring is starting there. How does the Arab Spring work? The Arab Spring works by Islamists looking at the government as their only source to enforce Islam, because Sharia seeks to dominate the government. See, Islam is not a religion that is based on just preaching to the hearts and souls of people. That is not the purpose of Islam. Islam must control government in order for it to actually control people. So, unlike Christianity, Islam preaches by force over people through government. And that's why the ultimate goal of Islam is to bring down every government in order for it to control the people. So they have their eyes now on the British government. What do? They're still a minority, really, in England. So what do? They start pushing the envelope, getting offended, threatening people, threatening to ruin people, maybe their reputation. God knows what they're holding on the British government. Threats of assassinations. And after they go larger numbers of Muslims, the country really weakens, and suddenly, like Egypt, which, Mubarak was brought down, the Muslim Brotherhood took over, they have to do a counter-revolution to bring back military dictatorship, which is the only thing that can survive, theocracy. Okay. Is a military dictatorship. So perhaps in England, they're going to have a military dictatorship to prevent Sharia from going to the government.
Wow.
Like Egypt.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Nonie, for being on this segment. And again, we want to recommend your books, all three of them, but this one in particular, Cruel and Unusual Punishment, The Terrifying Global Implications of Islamic Law. Please go to wherever fine books are sold and pick that up and support Nonie and her work. And we do need to take a break right now, so Tommy, we'll be back in just a few minutes with you one more time, sir, and we want to give more information to the world and let them know about what's going on. Welcome back to the Trinity Channel for the first Apologetics Marathon of 2016. Our great guest, who we are privileged to have with us for this amazing show that, again, was put in place at the very last moment. This was not part of the original plan, but this is such a vital topic that we have our friend Tommy Robinson here on the show. You can find him on Facebook. You can find his book on Amazon, Enemy of the State. And you can find this in Kindle version. You can find the paperback like I have here. I'm really glad I have a paperback because I don't really like ebooks too much. But go to Tommy's website, which is tommyrobinson.co.uk, and you can pick up his book if you want to get the paperback version. But you can find, again, the Kindle online. But Tommy's the founder and ex-leader of the English Defense League, which was formed in 2009. Since leaving the EDL, he's become an avid speaker on the problems in the Western world with the rise of extremism, Islam, ISIS, hate speakers, and Sharia. And it is a blessing to have him here on the show titled The Islamization of the United Kingdom. What is Islamization? It is the process of a society shift towards Islam. And Islam, as we said earlier, is not just a religion, it's a political ideology, a religio-political system. Yes, it is a religion, but it's a political ideology combined. And that is why Sharia is in place. There are countries under Sharia, which is Islamic law. They follow Islamic law, which is derived from the Quran and the Sunnah, the example of Muhammad, which you find in the Hadith. That is what Tommy is seeing implemented, and it's this Islamization in the United Kingdom. If you've not watched the beginning of the show, watch it. You can listen to what Tommy has said about what has happened since he was a young boy up to the point where we are now. And we see this, some people call it creeping Sharia, of where as the Muslim population grows, they become more aggressive, they start to demand more things, they start to get more aggressive in whichever way. And of course, Tommy would say, hey, here in the UK, yes, it's not completely under Sharia as a whole, but I mean, there are neighborhoods under Sharia. There are places where Tommy would not want to go because even the police are, it's kind of like an East Los Angeles kind of neighborhood where, hey, we either ask permission or we go in large groups because it is almost like a different country. When you walk into a Sharia-controlled zone, it's like as if you were living in the Middle East under Sharia in whichever country that would happen to be. But Tommy, there's another book that I have that I don't have with me right now, but it's written by Sam Solomon, and it's called Modern Day Trojan Horse, Al-Hijra, the Islamic Doctrine of Immigration, Accepting Freedom or Imposing Islam. So you have talked about how in Sharia, how there's a spreading of the Islamization and how more and more people are becoming radicalized, quote unquote, which radical it has a negative connotation attached to it. Radical just means going back to the root. So a radical Christian follows the New Testament. They do what Jesus said to do. A radical Muslim follows Muhammad. They look to the Quran. They look to the Hadith. They do what Muhammad said to do. Now, Tommy, one of the quotes in this book here, he's talking about the implementation of Sharia family law in the United Kingdom. And he says, are these communities wanting to join the free societies, or are they extending the abode of Islam as per the doctrine of immigration, which was modeled by Muhammad and the initial hijrah? The initial hijrah is when Muhammad fled from Mecca to Medina. That's why every date in Islamic sources after that is AH, not AD, Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord. But we see this abode of Islam. And Tommy, you and I both have talked about Wahhabism, but even more so than that, Salafism. Not looking to Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab in the 1700s, but looking to just Muhammad himself, the first three generations. That's where every Salafi looks to. So you can have a Salafi living today in the UK. You can have a Salafis living in the 1100s, 1400s, because it's not Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. They're looking to just Muhammad himself. And it seems like throughout history, as maybe Islam has strayed from what Muhammad did, there were reformations. Ibn Taymiyyah, back in the 1300 times, he said, no, get away from this, go back to the Prophet. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, no, let's get back to the Prophet. So every time there's been a reformation, it's been a backward, a regressive reformation to the time of Muhammad. What did he do? And we see ISIS, basically Salafists. They are going back to the time of Muhammad. What would he do? There's scholars today saying if Muhammad was alive today, he wouldn't just join ISIS, he would lead ISIS. Tommy, what do you have to say to that claim, as well as the Sharia family law that has been implemented in the UK?
The problem we have, you see Salafists, it's the fastest growing sect of Islam in Europe. Salafists such as in my hometown, which is the home mosque called the Luton Islamic Centre, that's a Salafist mosque. It's the only English-speaking mosque as well. So it's where all the converts automatically go, because it's the English-speaking mosque. It's where all the prison converts also go. It's where the Stockholm bomber went. It's where recently the school, the madrasa, because of this big uproar in the recent years, the school was raided in the Salafist mosque, and they found school books in the school children's library telling them how to cut off hands and feet as punishments. This same mosque was given £140,000 of taxpayers' money. So we're funding this in the UK. Why are we funding it? Your other guest just spoke about the Islamization and what they would do to take over. What they've actually done in the UK and what they're doing is they've just infiltrated major parties. We had in London, we had a mayor in London of an area called Tower Hamlets, which was a caliphate, really, within an Islamic community within London. Now, this mayor was an Islamic radical who was kicked out of the Labour Party in the UK for his extremist ties. What they then did is they then collected signatures from the Muslim community to enforce him as the mayor. He then became the mayor. He became in charge of £1 billion budget. £1 billion budget. The first thing he put in plans for were £1 million sculptures at either end when you enter the Muslim community. Huge sculptures of Islamic headscarves. No joke. When you enter the Islamic community. He siphoned off all funding to self-fund the Islamic radical groups. So we're funding it and paying for it ourselves. What's happened in the UK is that they've infiltrated major political parties such as the Labour Party. The Labour Party now in the UK, when they have meetings in Islamic community areas, they segregate men and women. In the meetings, this is a political party, the second biggest political party in our country. They segregate the meetings. They enforce Sharia for the meetings. There's also huge Jewish hatred now within that party, which is becoming apparent in that party. So I always thought the Islamic community would start their own Islamic democracy, Islamic political party in order to use our democracy to end our democracy. But instead, they've just infiltrated the major parties. There's a famous speech by Shalid Malik, who's the first Muslim minister for Labour. It's probably in 2008 or 2009. And he says in 2006 we had one Muslim MP, inshallah. In 2007 we had 3 Muslim MPs. In 2008 we had 8 Muslim MPs. And he goes on, and in between each thing he says, inshallah, inshallah, God willing. Yeah. And then he says that within 10 years in this country, the majority of MPs will be Muslim. Within 30 years in this country, the Prime Minister of this country will share our faith. Now that's what we're witnessing in the UK. We're witnessing that Islam, due to the way they orchestrate and organise themselves through their mosques, which we don't through our churches in the UK, due to the way they do it, they become such a huge power in politics, vote bank politics. Say, for example, we're talking about we've lost our democracy. We have. In the UK, only 30% of people vote. 30%. Well, in Luton, like my hometown, approximately 50,000 people vote out of the 200,000 people. Now, we have 50,000 Muslims. Yeah? They all vote. They organise themselves through the leader of the Council of Mosques, and they do deals with the local political party for who to vote for and how to get in. So they become a huge power. Even though they're only 4% of the country, they can decide many elections from the Muslim vote. So then we see them getting what they want through our own political system. So again, using our democracy to end our democracy.
Okay. And Tommy, we have a caller who we want to go to in just a minute or so. After that caller, Tommy, I'm sure he probably might have a question for you. So let's answer that, and then we want to go on and start talking about your personal story and what you have gone through personally to let our audience know. But what we were talking about earlier is Tommy talks about the Islamization of the UK and more Muslims coming in, Islam growing not only because of immigration, but because of conversion, or technically more reversion if you look to the actual Islamic theology, but also birth rate. If Muslims are having on average 8 children per family and everybody else is having 1 or 2, well, just birth rate alone is going to cause Islam to spread, quote unquote. But when we talked about Ibn Taymiyyah and how he said he was a reformer, quote unquote, getting back to Muhammad. Muhammad was born in 570, died in 632. We have the spreading of Islam under Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman. We have the early jurists who came up and codified Islamic law, Sharia. And they are the ones who came up with these 2 terms, the Dar al-Harb and the Dar al-Islam. The Dar al-Harb being the abode of war, and the Dar al-Islam being the abode of peace. Countries under Sharia, or areas controlled by Muslims, were the abode of peace, the Dar al-Islam, but the Dar al-Harb was all other parts of the world. And we see Islam moving into non-Islamic areas. And Ibn Taymiyyah didn't come up with that Dar al-Harb, he was just following the early jurists. But he said any act of war against Dar al-Harb is morally justified, legal, and exempt from any ethical judgment. So according to the earliest jurists and to the Islamic reformers, again, regressive Salafist reformers throughout time, Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, basically pointing back to Muhammad and wanting to spread Islam throughout the world, which we are seeing all over the place in the UK, as Tommy has been saying, and we're seeing it spreading to other parts of the world as well. So we want to go to Tommy's personal story here in just a few minutes, but first we have a caller. We have a caller named Jay. Can you hear me?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm sure you're enjoying the show. Not in a, I like this type of thought, but it's very informative. Do you have a question for Tommy Robinson?
Yes, I do actually. I have a few questions, if I may. The first one, how big and influential are the Dawah tables and the Dawah groups in the UK? What's being done to challenge them? That's the first question. The second question is, who is more powerful, the leftist elites or the Islamists? And lastly, how can you tackle the left who seems to be siding with the Islamists for everything?
Okay, Tommy, did you get all those?
What was the first question?
As far as the Dawah tables, Dawah being basically the Islamic, as you know, I'm just letting the audience know, Dawah, D-A-W-A, usually how it's spelled, D-A-W-A-H.
The Islamic tables that are in every town and city.
Yeah, the tables where they basically, it's kind of like a Islamic form of evangelism, although there's no gospel there, but it's a spreading of Islam, handing out Qurans, trying to get people to say the Shahada. What is being done, Tommy, to stop that, if there is anything? But you said that they're on every corner, basically?
In my hometown, again, you can look up this centre. My council opened a centre called Discover Islam. This centre is a shop in our town centre. It was opened and supported by our police and our politicians. Yeah, they opened it. Now, when I began looking into this centre before it opened, it's called Discover Islam, and I found the manager of the centre, and he had a blog. And on his blog, he said he will not rest until Islam is brought into every home in Luton. Yeah? He said that Christians are wearing suicide vests of wrongful belief. These suicide vests must be deactivated. So the first thing I did when I read this was I contacted my council and said, we don't need this. We don't want this in our town. Who do you think you are bringing these people to our town? They were coming from London, this Dawah stuff. Now, I made such a hoo-ha, and I looked into the links of who this man was, the charities behind them. It was a charity called IRA. I found videos of them all saying you can beat your wife with a stick. All these mad views. Now, the leader of that centre had to resign before the centre even opened due to the expose we did on them. But that centre is still there. Now, what that centre does is it goes around giving food to the homeless and getting front page stories about how great they are. But we all know, really, it's just Dawah. That's all it's for. It's for furthering Islam. That book opened, that stall, and this isn't a stall. This isn't just like a Dawah stall. This is a big shop in our shopping centre. And it's been supported and opened by an alliance, as you've just asked a question about, an alliance by the far left who hate Christianity, the far left who hate our country, many of them who hate democracy and hate law due to their communist or Marxist views. There's an alliance between them and Islam to destroy and disrupt our country. And it's a very strong alliance. It should be a weak alliance because really they hate religion anyway. They hate Islam just like they hate Christianity. But they're both using and playing off each other to further their own agendas and goals. But we all know that if Islam was to conquer, then the left would be the first to be on the forefront or on the back foot of expulsion. But yeah, nothing's being done to counter the Dawah stalls. We was planning years ago to what's needed. What's needed is in every town and city where there's a Dawah stall, there needs to be another stall. Now, I know yourself would say it would be furthering Christianity or talking about Christianity. I think we need a stall which would educate on Muhammad. So just as they have, because they have about 10 different leaflets, there should be a leaflet telling you everything that Muhammad did. There should be a leaflet countering or educating on all the things. But there's nothing. Every single area in the UK, we have Dawah stalls. Okay. And they're converting across the UK.
Okay. And Tommy, like I want to tell our audience again, by these primary sources, look to the Quran, look to the Hadith, look to the Sirah literature, the oldest biography of Muhammad, the Sirat Rasulullah by Ibn Ishaq, which is just a rendition from Ibn Hisham. But this was the earliest biography, about 150 years away from Muhammad's life, which technically is historically a little bit of a problem, but nevertheless, it is the earliest biography on Muhammad. So let's just take about a minute to answer the other two questions, and then I want to give you, Tommy, about 15, maybe 20 minutes to just tell the world your story and what you have faced, what you have gone through personally. But the second question, the leftist elite or the Islamists, which group kind of has a bigger influence, which I think you've kind of answered in this show, but if you need to explain any more, please do so for about a minute, and I want to do the third question, and then we want to give the rest of the show to you to share your story. So who has more influence, I guess, leftist elite or Islamists?
The leftist elite are the ones paving the way for the Islamists. Most of the things that for the spread of Islam wouldn't be possible without the leftist elite facilitating it and supporting it. And not just supporting it, but also shutting down and slandering and destroying anyone who tries to criticise it.
Okay.
So, yeah, the alliance is very strong between the two. They both work hand in hand in the UK.
Okay. Now, when you say that they're kind of just paving the way for the Islamization, is this because they're just completely ignorant of the worldview and ultimate goal of the political religio-political system known in Islam, or is it because there's some money involved, or both, or what?
I'd say that many of them are naive to the agenda of Islam.
Okay.
What I find when I talk to many of these leftists, they know nothing about Islam. They know nothing. They know nothing about Muhammad. So yeah, and also there's this inner guilt, this white, I call it white guilt. We call it white guilt within many of them, which I don't have. I've got nothing to feel guilty of. I'm proud, very proud of my country, of my culture, of who I am, my history.
Yeah.
But they're not. They despise it. And then there's also a fact that many of these who are they may not be huge in number, but they're very active and very well funded. If you look at an organisation like Hope Not Hate are an organisation that have harassed me my whole life. They've countered everything I've done. They've slandered me. They've put propaganda against me. They are funded primarily from American donors who are complete open borders. Yeah? So they're open borders. So anyone who goes against that, there's huge funding to destroy them, criticise them, find out where they work, all these different tactics that will just bring you down. So, and we'll go on and talk about that now. The problems that I faced for speaking up. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it sends a message to everyone else. Stay silent, shut up, be quiet. Be quiet, that's what we're supposed to do. Okay. We're supposed to sit around and watch the destruction of our nation and our people and just be quiet about it.
Yeah, but Tommy, right before we get to your story, I'm going to give like I said, 15, 20 minutes to you just to tell that. But the last question that the caller had was, you talked about the leftist elite, how can they be counteracted in any way? I mean, is that possible?
See, I see my job just to educate and awaken the people, because I think if every British and English man understood where we're headed, understood what problems we're going to face, what lays ahead for all of us and our kids, I think we'd have a revolution tomorrow. But they don't understand. They don't get it. They don't get it at all. So that's what I see my job as doing. I think the elite and the government, the solution to this problem is not going to come from our leaders. It's going to come from our people in sheer massive numbers. There's going to be a defining moment that happens, whether it be in my country or in Europe, that changes the direction of what's happening. We're heading towards that. I always used to say 10, 15 years, 20 years, we're going to have this huge clash. Okay. That's not that many years away now. We're already seeing the beginnings of it. We're seeing a clash of civilizations now. Okay. That's only going to get worse. And what I see my job has to do is to unify people and awaken them to what Islam is. Okay. Because everyone's being lied to. So how do we counter the left politically? In America, you're very lucky. I look at your country, very lucky, because you actually have some people of influence, of political leaders, who are prepared, and due to free speech in your country, which we don't have in our country anymore, it's just it's a myth. Yeah. You have leaders that are prepared to talk and say what needs to be said.
Okay, yeah, and we are so glad and thankful to God that we still are where we are. Again, we can look to the UK and see what has happened there because of the decisions that they have made. Americans throughout the United States look to the UK. We can either learn from their mistakes or follow in their footsteps, one of the two. But we need to maintain our freedom of speech to where when someone like Tommy comes to the US and talks, that is what freedom of speech is about, to say what you want to say. If someone says something that offends you, walk away. But in America, you can say what you want to say, and we are sad that Tommy does not have more freedom of speech than what he has. But we have already gone over time in this show, and I want to recommend one more time before I give Tommy the next 10 minutes to just tell his story and what he wants to tell the world. Get his book, Enemy of the State. This is going to go in depth on what Tommy has gone through. Watch the show again, share it with friends. Tommy, the last 10 minutes of the show, I'm going to give to you to say whatever you want to say, tell your story, what you've been through, things that have happened to you. 10 minutes, go.
Right. I call my book Enemy of the State. There's a reason for that, because the biggest problem I faced, I knew through growing up in Luton that when I spoke out against Islam, I knew what I was going to face. I knew the threats of violence. I knew what was going to be aimed at me. I was prepared for that and ready for that. What I wasn't prepared for was the destruction and the attack on my life, on my reputation, on my family by the state, by the authorities, by the police. The complete persecution, which is, I don't think I can really put it in words to what's gone on. I've been, from day one when this first started, it started in 2009, which was the birth of the English Defence League. We had our returning soldiers were marching through my hometown. They were met by a large group of Muslims who called them baby killers, spat in their faces. For me, that was the final day and the final straw. And it was time to start a fight back. I started an organisation called the United People of Luton. From the start, I was arrested and persecuted. I've had raids. I had police raids where I was arrested at Luton Airport. I had police come with machine guns into my family's house. They ran with my children in the house. They ransacked my mother's house. Later, I've proved that these were fraudulent raids. They were politically motivated raids in order to silence and shut me up. I faced countless, time and time again, arrests, court case, fabricated charges. I've been imprisoned time and time again. When I've been imprisoned, I was imprisoned. We had, in 2011, a group of Muslims were travelling on their way to kill us. They were arrested. They were found with guns, IEDs, swords. They were going to turn up, chop us up, murder us, kill us. They were given 30 years in prison because I'd committed blasphemy, you see. I'd committed blasphemy, so I had to be killed. So these Muslims were put in prison. I was then, the police went through my life, through everything in my entire life. They went through, I think it's called the IRS in America, right? In the UK, the tax. They went through every financial transaction I'd ever had in my life. And the same with my parents, and the same with my cousins, and the same with the rest of my family, the same with my wife. They came in and arrested my wife when she was 6 months pregnant. And they dissected our whole entire life. And they found anything and everything to do with not paying tax. Going back 6 years for not paying tax on things that were sold on eBay was one of my family members' charges. With myself, they put me on a tax investigation, a tax trial for 4 years. They closed my businesses. They froze my assets. They put me on a control order that were brought in for terrorists that I wasn't allowed a bank account. I wasn't allowed a bank account for 4 years. At the end of the 4 years, they managed to hold family members on different charges. They had no charges on me. And then I was offered a deal where if I plead guilty to a charge, they will let my family members go. Now, I had to face, because of my beliefs, you just have to go on YouTube. You'll find incident after incident of me being violently beaten. With terrorists, I think Al-Shabaab named me to be killed at all costs. There's plenty of videos of me having my face smashed in, my face rearranged by Muslim radicals. That's the life I lead, yeah? I have to lead that life to do what I do. Now, the one bit of security and stability I have is that no one knows what my wife looks like. No one knows who my wife is. Yeah? I have 3 beautiful young children, so I have to protect them at all costs. What the police did is they held my wife on a charge, and they knew that the press and the media and all the left-wing groups will be at the court case. So they were putting her on a charge. She didn't have to attend court, but they gave a court date. I'm then offered a deal where if I want my wife's freedom, if I don't want her to go to court, then she would never have got convicted. But if I don't want that, then I have to plead guilty. I have to plead guilty to the fact that my brother-in-law lied on a self-certification mortgage form. This is how deep they went. So when he got a mortgage, instead of earning £12,000 a year, he said he earned £20,000 a year. Everyone did it in the UK. It was a self-cert mortgage. He got a mortgage. This is 7 or 8 years ago. He got a mortgage. He sold the house 6 months later, and no one lost no money. Now, for that charge, if I wanted my wife and my other family members to be freed from court, I had to plead guilty. So I did what I had to do as a man and as a father, and to protect my family. I pleaded guilty to a charge that I had no financial gain for. I pleaded guilty, and they got what they wanted. They got me in prison. They then took me to a prison, the same, for that little lie on a form, the same maximum security prison that houses all Muslim terrorists. They put me in with the 6 people who wished to kill me, who were in jail for 30 years for trying to kill me. Now, this goes against every law book, every rule book, right? This is, I have no doubt about it whatsoever, this is a direct attempt by the state to put me in a position where I will be murdered by Muslims, because it makes their job of Islamifying our great nation very easy, because I have become the most vocal and most public opposition to Islam in the UK. I then find myself, I'm locked in a room. I'm locked in a room in the prison. I lose my teeth. I have my head glued. I'm lucky to come out of there. Yeah? And this is just one experience. This is what my book talks about, and it's why the theme enemy of the state has come in, because the biggest problem I've faced is the state, is the secret organisations, the destruction, the attacks, the links with the media to defame me as a racist or a bigot. There's nothing racist about me. The majority of my friends are actually non-white. I actually despise racism. I'm hated just as much by the Nazis as I am by the Islamists and the left, because I hate Nazis, because I think Nazism is as backward as Islamism. So the biggest warning is that there is obviously an orchestrated plan to Islamify my country, Europe. You have to wake up. America, you're behind us. And if I had any message now, it would be, say, learn from our mistakes, learn from my country's mistakes. You don't want a divided country. You've got children like I've got children. You want to hand them down. My job and our duty in the UK is to hand down a safe and prosperous Britain to our children. There is not one Englishman that can currently say the direction our country is going in is in the right direction. So if we're all agreed on that, what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it? We're all scared of being called racist. We're all scared. And when we talk about, you talk about your founding fathers, when I talk about our forefathers, when they were 14 years old, they were pretending they were 16-year-olds so they can go and fight the Nazis, so they go and defend their country, so they can protect their country. And right now we've bred a complete generation of weak, cowardice people. Cowardice people, do not let that happen to your country. You're lucky. I look to your country and I envy your country. I envy the pride and the patriotism you have in your flag, in your nation. We don't have that anymore. That's been taken from us. I look at the oldest generation and I see what they had, and then I look at my generation and I think of the next generation down. They are breeding it out of us so that there won't even be a fight back to what is happening. So that's it. I'll stop going on now, because I could rant on forever about these issues, because I feel so passionately about them. But if I had one message to America, one message to the Middle East, the Europe you think you know, what your fathers and your parents would have told you about freedom and democracy in this beautiful Europe that defended the world, this small country, Britain, that ruled the world, it's being taken over by a 7th century cult. That's what's happening.
Tommy, we've had an unbelievable amount of information on this show, and like I said, it was a blessing to do this show for our audience. This is being streamed all over the world, and it's available on YouTube for you to rewatch, to share with your friends. Please go to Tommy's website, tommyrobinson.co.uk. Go on to Amazon or anywhere else where you buy books and get Tommy's book, Enemy of the State. Pick this up. Go to Tommy's website. Donate to Tommy. Tommy, is there a place where people can just donate to help you or anything like that?
I have a legal fund. Today, actually, I don't know if you know, but today I've been in court. I've been in court on trial. I was going to go to jail today. So when I was put in prison on one of these incidents, I was put in prison for 8 days. Yeah. So when I got to the prison, I told them, I said, I'm going to get killed in here. I don't know if anyone understands the full problems we face in the UK prisons. We have Sharia being enforced in the UK prisons. Non-Muslims having to pay jizya for protection in the UK prisons. Yeah. So I've been put in there. Everyone knows what's going to happen. I'm in there for 8 days. They put me in again with Muslim murderers who are serving 25, 30 years. I tell the prison authorities, I'm going to be killed here. Yeah? My cell door's open. I tell the guard again, I'm going to get seriously hurt here. I'm warning you of what's going to happen here. Yeah? Nothing, no protection. They wouldn't separate me or segregate me. So then I get told of a plan by a Somalian to throw boiling water with sugar, which they call it napalm, because it will take my face off. Yeah? I get told of this plan. So I react. So I have seconds to react to this from a Muslim with a cup of boiling water, and I strike him before he has the opportunity to do it. Yeah? And I'm then arrested when I get out of prison. So the prison dismissed the case. I'm then arrested weeks later as part of an ongoing persecution. I'm arrested for this case. I went on trial today. That's why I'm wearing a suit. I went on trial today for defending myself in this case, and today I was acquitted. It was dismissed and kicked out of court. But this only happened because for the first time, I've been stitched up left, right and centre for 6 years, because to have good representation in the United Kingdom, you need money. Money is something I don't have, and we don't have. Yeah? But for the first time, friends in Canada set up the West in Danger website. They set up a campaign to get me the best legal representation, and I had a £12,000 it cost for 1 day for great representation. And for the first time, he went in today and he tore it to pieces. He showed everything they were doing that was illegal in order to get. They were trying to get me back in prison for defending myself, for preventing an attack that I had no other option but to do. Yeah. So all of this is going on, but there was a thing set up which isn't for my personal money. It's a legal fund that's been set up because the state are not going to stop. I know I'm going to face more charges for whatever they can find to pin on me. So now I feel confident, due to people's support in this case, for the first time in 6 years, I've been able to walk into a fair fight in a court. Amen. Because I've actually had decent representation rather than a state-sponsored solicitor. Yeah. So, yeah, sorry, okay. I went off again, didn't I?
No, Tommy, it has been such a blessing to have you here with us. I've had coffee here. I mean, you and I both could go on for hours and hours and hours. I wish you were here right now just so we could have dinner tonight and talk more. But we do have to go because we do have other shows in our Apologetics Marathon. It's been such a blessing to have you here. Again, friends, go to Tommy Robinson, TommyRobinson.co.uk to check out Tommy's website. Again, get Tommy's book, Enemy of the State, wherever fine books are sold. Nonie Darwish was on our show earlier. Pick up Cruel and Usual Punishment, the Global Implications of Islamic Law. A couple other books to pick up. Tommy talked about the apostasy law. Freedom to Believe, Challenging Islam's Apostasy Law by Patrick Sukdeo. This is actually available online as well on Amazon. And if you want a shorter read on just more about Sharia that you can learn, Sharia Law for Non-Muslims, this is from the Center for the Study of Political Islam. Islam is a religio-political system, a religion and political ideology combined. Friends, support Tommy, buy his book, not only the Kindle, but keep buying the paperback, and let's keep it constantly sold out and making them have to publish more just to get Tommy's story to the world. Continue to support Trinity Channel. Find this show on YouTube, probably within the next hour or less. It will be available. Spread it. Post the link to the show everywhere. Inform people about it. Friends, at the end of this show, at the end of the day, again, our heart is for Muslims. We would pray that all these Muslims in the UK, all the Muslims under countries that are under Sharia, our prayers that they would all repent and put their trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. There cannot be peace until people come to know the Prince of Peace, and that is the Jesus of the New Testament, not the Isa of the Quran. I'm going to leave it with that. Thank you so much for tuning in. To wrap up this show, Tommy, thank you so much for your time, for being on. God bless you, and we pray for you. Friends, pray for the Trinity Channel. Pray for Tommy. Pray that more things like this would happen where he is acquitted because of the injustices that he is facing. Tommy, I'm going to have to say goodbye for now. Thank you for coming on. Let's talk more. Thank you, Tommy. Talk to you soon.